Should we put Dale on the visitor?
Yeah, I guess that'd be, he's visiting.
Well, I just wanted to update a little bit where we're at on the bypassing at the lift station. Rusty and I have been on the phone last week because what looks like we got two problems yet that we haven't put our finger on yet. One is the pumps do not pump up to the capacity that they should. They don't meet the performance. The second is there's still too much head loss in the force main, so we're working on both those problems. But I think, in my opinion, we got two problems. So Rusty and I spent last Thursday or Friday on the phone with Alan Bradley as the supplier for those variable frequency drives. So it just doesn't look like we got some strange things going on there. We're not quite sure we understand because we're putting 42 amps in on the line side or the utility side, but then we're putting 61 amps out to the motor, which 61 amps to the motor is full nameplate data on it, so it should be at capacity. But when I plot the data for the pumpage we got and the pressure we're putting out, it's only using 30 horsepower. It's not coming up to 50 horsepower. So Russ and I spent a couple hours on the phone with Alan Bradley guys last week because those VFDs had several parameters in them that you can set. And I thought for sure one or two of those was set wrong, and that's why we weren't getting the capacity of that we thought was the VFD. So we spent a couple hours on the phone and didn't get anywhere other than checking things we already knew. Because that VFD has like 300 or 400 different parameters you can set in it for what you're doing with it, running conveyor belts or pumps or other things. So I thought for sure that something was set wrong in that VFD, but we've not found it if it is yet. Because it's difficult to understand how we can be putting 42 amps in on the line side and get 61 amps out. We can't make power. Although that VFD does some tricky things with the power. It converts it to a DC bus, which makes this typically a three-phase sine wave curve goes like this, up and down, with three different phases in there. But they do this VFD so they can change the frequency, which changes the speed of the motor, but on a DC bus. So they're actually putting DC current out and then converting it back to AC. And I don't quite understand how that works, but it's still puzzling how we can be putting 41 amps in off the utility side and getting 61 out to run the motor. When I look at the performance of the pump and the capacity, it's only using 30 horsepower. So if I look at 41 amps on the incoming side, that's 30 horsepower. So from what I'm measuring on the line side and what the pump is pumping, they seem to agree in my opinion. It's just the VFD saying it's at rated 61 amps. You can't pull any more current on it. So that's a puzzling thing I don't have the answer for. So the second one is I did some more plotting on the head losses that we're seeing in that force main where we had some points in it last year and when we put the air release manholes in. And it appears when I look at the plot of the curve versus where it's actually the pressure is and where it theoretically should be, there's a problem out there at 4,000 to 5,000 feet from the pump station. Whether that's the air bubble that we're missing or if there's something in the force main. So Rusty and I are going to do some more looking tomorrow and see if we can find, by some more pressure testing, see if we can narrow it down. And I'm not quite sure how we look in the pipe to see what's in there or what the problem is. It could be an air bubble. If they happen to build, if they built a hill in that force main when they built it, there could be a bubble sitting in there, and that's the bubble we've been after all the time. So we got two unknowns, and I don't have the answers yet. So I just wanted to update you tonight where we're at, and that's the plan, is to work on it some more tomorrow with some more readings. And the other thing I'm looking at talking with Rusty is about we bypass those VFDs and put the starters back in so we can verify in our own mind that the VFDs are actually putting out 61 amps like it says on the nameplate and also with my amp meter, or if they're really true or put 42 amps on and we're not spinning that motor at 100%. So we got two things we got to narrow down and see if we can figure out what's going on here yet. We don't have an answer yet. Rusty's he's concerned too about it because I think we got two problems yet and we haven't found it yet. I don't know if you got any input, Rusty.
Nobody can tell you what's going on the other end then?
Not yet, because we spent a couple hours on the phone with the factory guys, because I thought for sure I spent last week talking to them 2 or 3 different times, and they wanted me to come up and check out some parameters, which we did with Rusty's help. We did, and then we spent 2 hours on the phone with the factory guys from Alan Bradley, and they walked us through some things, and they said, well, once you're at 60 hertz or full speed, and you got 480 volts on the inlet side, and it should be running at full speed. It should be putting out full capacity, but it's not. And the irony of it is the one pump's completely rebuilt. You know, it's got a new impeller and a new volute on it. So, you know, that was the other thing we thought of a couple years ago before we changed it. The pumps were worn out. Well, now we got one new impeller and one volute on was what we put on there. So we got basically a new pump. So it ought to be running at new pump performance, and it's just not. It's not running at performance, nor is the one that we haven't done any work on yet. But so I don't know what to do, because they put a full-size impeller in that one pump, which is a little bit too big. In theory, it should be too big because it should be up too high on the curve. It should pull more than 50 horsepower with that bigger impeller, but it doesn't. So we got to trim that impeller a little bit, but I don't want to trim it yet because I can't get the pumping capacity out of that pump to see what it's really doing. I mean, it's not making sense. So we've got to do some more analysis on it by bypassing that VFD and doing some more narrowing down on the force main. If there's a bubble sitting in there that we aren't in the right spot where that bubble is yet, or if there's something actually in that force main that's got it restricted, which will be puzzling to figure out where that is. All right, I think I got an idea of where it is now. It's out there at 4,000 to 5,000 feet from the lift station to the east is where it plots out. So we'll know more after we get some more pressure readings to try to narrow that down.
How close is that to one of your manholes?
It's just east of one of the manholes, because we put the air release manhole in. When we looked at the profile of the pipe when it was installed, it's sitting right on that high point. It's only about 2 feet difference in elevation, but they came up there at, what is that, Durant Avenue? We got the right street. They came up there about 2 feet, and then they dropped down about 2 feet, and then went out to Lagoon. So there's a high point right there. And that's where we put one. So it looks like from the data it could be just east of that one a little bit. So if they didn't put the high point where they showed it on the diagram, we may have missed the high point. It may be further east of us. So that's what we're trying to narrow down of where that is and see if we can figure that out. So we can try to get that force main to doing the capacity it's supposed to, and then work on the sewage pump so we can get them up to capacity. Because our dilemma is essentially we've got to increase the capacity of the lift station to get more flow out of town so we don't bypass it. That's what DNR is an order on us for, is to comply with that, is to not bypass. So in order not to bypass, we've got to increase the pumping capacity. Now, the other thing we've done, we've had 2 people so far who in town have plugged their intake and I forget the other one, cistern. But we got, I'm sorry, the lady that's over here, has she gotten hers taken care of yet? Okay. She wrote me a letter back in February and said her plumber was getting lined up to go put her sump pump in to get that one out of her floor drain, and then also her neighbors, I understand. We're working with it, but they haven't done it yet apparently. So we need to get those things cleaned up so we can go to DNR saying we've done some rehabilitation to the sewer system by removing some of the I&I and getting it out. And we've increased what we're after is to increase the capacity of the pump station so we can send it out so we don't have to bypass it. So that's the objective we've got to get to somehow. So that's where we're at. I just wanted to update you on where we're at and what we're trying to do, and try to get a couple more of these answers figured out of what we got here, the pumps and the enforcement. Any questions, I guess?
When you spool those pumps up with a soft start, is there a measurement that you, as they start, and you increase speed, can you measure amperage as opposed to gallons pumped on the startup? Is the thing cavitating when it gets to high RPMs? Is that what's happening?
No, I don't think so, because it's submerged.
Okay.
Your submersible pump's submerged, so it's got plenty of water over the top of it. So cavitation would be the least thing that I would suspect.
What's your pumping curve? Is it even all the way up? Or does it lose at higher RPMs?
Yeah, well, once you get down to, it's in hertz. It works at 60 hertz is full speed. So usually this one, when we really haven't backed it off, see where it doesn't pump. But back when you get down around 40-some hertz, usually they'll quit pumping. Or what happens is they're not spinning fast enough to overcome the resistance of the pipe, is what happens. So
does it max out before it gets to the full hertz, or are you steadily increasing your output?
It steadily increases to the point where we only get...
But it hits a spot in it.
It hits about 500 gallon minutes where it hits for the maximum.
Right.
And it's about 450 for the little pump or the little impeller, where max out, and about 500 on the big one. So with the big impeller, we aren't getting that much flow. When I look at the curve at full speed at 50 horsepower, I ought to be doing 800 to 900 gallons a minute in that force main. We aren't close to that. So that tells me our VFD's not spinning the pump that's full speed, or the current's too low, because the current's too low, which indicates to me we're not spinning it fast enough on the line side, because we're only pulling 42 amps and the motor's rated for 61. And the VFD says it's got 61 amps going to it, and I put my amp meter on, it's 61 amps. So how we can have 61 amps at the motor, only 42 in the input? You know, that's a 20 amp difference. That's too, and we can't make energy. I mean, from Mid-America, we can't be making anything.
No.
So something, I thought for sure, talking with the factory guy, he'd find the silver bullet and say, oh, here it is, parameter number 62, you got set wrong. But he didn't tell us that, or didn't find it. Because that's what I thought, they were set up wrong. And we got one or two, because there's like 400 parameters you can set in those things. They're sophisticated, very sophisticated VFDs. So
if you find that parameter that says that it makes current, I want that.
Yeah. So that does not make sense.
No. So one of the two readings is wrong. Something is incorrect.
Yeah,
Either inbound or outbound.
Yeah,
Both can't be right.
Yeah, no.
So which one's wrong?
That's what we're trying to find out. Because what we're worried about is we don't want to over amp the motor. If we got 61 amps on it, we don't want to run it any higher and it will burn up the motor. So if that's the true 61 amps going to it, which I'm not sure it is, so what I was talking with Rusty is Rusty still got the old starters. So I was going to come up and we'd unhook the VFD and put in a across the line starter like we used to have, and see what they're actually doing across the line. So then we can verify whether, yeah, all of a sudden the pump goes way up, there's a problem with the VFD. Or no, if we got 61 amps in and we're still pumping 500 gallons a minute, then we got something wrong with the pump or something, that the VFD is okay. So if we can narrow down whether or not we have confidence the VFD is doing the right thing, or no, it's the VFD is the problem, and then we have to go from there. But the factory guys, we spent 2 hours on the phone with those guys, and they didn't find the silver bullet for us that that's the problem that's wrong.
5,000 feet from the lift station makes that where that line curves south toward the
Not quite.
lagoon.
It's a Durant Street. It's another half mile to the bridge.
Right east of Ronnie's.
Yeah, it's that Durant Street, that first road going south is where that is.
Okay.
That's where it points. My data, because I've got it
T
plotted.
intersection.
Yeah, right there.
That T intersection.
So if they built a bump in it there and they got an air bubble sitting in there, that could be our culprit while we're taking too much head to get out there. I mean, so it looks like we got two problems. One is we got a pump problem, one we got a force main problem. We can put our handle on that. So that's the objective, is to do some more work on bypass that VFD, and also do some more pressure range after, see if we can find where that.
Have you put in the relief valves in? Is there four?
Three.
There's three.
Yeah. So if that's the air bubble and we missed it and it's further east from us, that maybe we'll have to stick another one on there. That's what I don't know, because I can't believe there's anything stuck in that pipe. I mean, that doesn't make sense. But you can't pump 2x4s down there, so I don't know. It must be a bubble sitting in there, so they must have built a bump in the pipe. Or if there is something stuck in there like a 2x4, it's been there for years, I don't know. You know, I don't know why it would be restricted. It doesn't make sense, but it's restricted someplace down there. Because after I get by out of my see, I got a gap of about 200 to 2,500 feet of pipe where I don't have any tests. So as soon as I get out at 7,400, the pressure is where it should be, 10 psi. Mathematically and theoretical, that's where it ought to be. So from about 7,800 feet out to Lagoon, it checks all right. It's from about 4,000 to 7,000 where there's a problem. Feet from the lift station.
How are you going to check that? They
That's
tap the pipe?
Yeah, that's the other choice. Is if I can narrow it down closer. I don't know if we can trace it to get a depth on it, because if it's a bubble, there's probably a bump built in it for some reason, and it's got a pocket of air set in it.
Can you get a
locator is what I was
locator
thinking.
that sensitive enough to tell you if there's a bump in it?
I think so. because we weren't real deep. That's something I gotta check too, see if we can find somebody who can run along with locator top the ground and get a depth reading and see if all of a sudden we got a hill built into that force main.
You probably can.
Because I can't think that there'd be a 2x4 or something in the restricted that's just been stuck in there for years. I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
Didn't we at one time run a bullet through that, clean it out?
Yes.
Yeah,
Before I got-
pig.
Or a pig, whatever, yeah.
We called it a pig. It was styrofoam bullet, yeah.
So they did run that through? Okay.
Yeah, there's no limit by it.
So there can't be a 2x4 or anything stuck in there if we run it through, because
But it can be an airlock. It can be.
that makes more sense to me that it's an airlock and we missed it, we're too far west.
Well,
it's east of
It's a
it.
very wet piece of ground right in there, and you know, the road's soft over it. It's possible that it's flexed, that it's come up.
Mhm.
Even if it wasn't installed that way, it may be that way now.
Because I was looking at, Rusty's got some notes on there where we had breaks in the main over the years, but there's none right in that area that I can see on the notes from when we had main breaks.
As far as your amperage on the motor, there's no logic there.
No.
That makes no sense.
And it's 20 amps difference, which is, that's 60%. I can't.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah.
The company that builds the motors, do they have a team that will troubleshoot in the country?
That's the other question they asked. Was that electric pump? Or who was that?
Or we bought them.
Yeah.
I think it was pollution control.
Oh, pollution control. Okay. That's the next.
I was before I was here though, so
Okay.
but I think that's where they came from.
Okay, that's something I can go back to too, and ask them. I can talk to the factory people on that too. Yes. And see what they got to say. But I'll need to what I really need to do is put the cross the line starter so I can start to pump at rated nameplate data, not have the VFD in the circuit. Then I got some better data. I can tell these guys what's going on. And then that will tell us if there is a problem with the VFD, that there's something wrong in there. Because that VFD, I don't know if you've seen the O&M manual on it, there must be 400 different parameters you can set in that thing because they can do all kinds of things. So my first impression was that one or two of those parameters are set wrong. We just don't have them set right. And the factory guys never came up with the parameter for us to check that could cause us a problem.
What's the rated horsepower on those motors?
50s. And what's the irony is when I look at when I only got 41 amps on the incoming side, that's 30 horsepower. And when I plotted on the performance curve of the pump at 500 gallons a minute at 47 pounds pressure, that's 30 horsepower of the curve. I can't get to the 50 horsepower curve. So those two things agree on the incoming side of the VFD and what the pumps actually come out to be about 30 horsepower. So that
Those aren't the original motors that they've been replaced.
Rebuilt.
the motors are rebuilt.
They're built or replaced.
Rebuilt. Year after I was here.
So there's still 50 horsepower rebuilt.
And then we just put a new
I'm not
look.
gonna smoke the knees.
Rusty don't want to turn it up 61 amps.
Is your amperage on your controller balanced?
Yes, it is. That's what the other, I checked that too. It's,
Because I've seen the heat sink
Yes.
get weak on one leg.
yep. So it runs 480, 485 in all three phases, and it runs 280 to 287 phase to ground in all three phases. It looks very balanced. I mean, there's
287, good number.
Right. So, and it runs 285 to 287. So, and then that's balanced pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's better than what I see a lot of balance.
Most of them 277.
You're right. So, and the differential is what you're after between the legs, because
Yes.
you don't want those really crazy, then you got problems.
Right.
So that looks fine. The factory guy didn't say there was nothing wrong with that either. So, and even coming out of the VFD, when I check in at the junction box at the wet well, it looks balanced area too. And I don't see anything like it lost a phase in the VFD. So we got to do some more investigations.
There was something in the original design spec that changed, and I cannot remember which way it was. Either the original design called for 30, and we later figured out they have to be 50s, or
40s.
called for 50s, and we had to go the other way.
Yeah, 40s. I went back through that too. We originally had it designed for 40s, and then during the construction phase, we changed it to 50s. So they got up 10 horsepower from what we originally had them designed. I went back through that too, checking on that, because the irony of it is I was up here about a year or 6 months after we put them in, And my data shows that we had almost 900 gallon minute come out back when we first put them in, which that agrees with the pump curve at 50 horsepower is what they should have been doing. And so, I don't know after that, at some point after that, we had some troubles with the motors. When I got burned up, I don't know all the history, but then that's when Rusty came over to work with me. And something happened, but at the beginning there we had trouble with Mid-America. They were imbalanced.
Right.
So at some point there, they changed the transformer out, I think, because they were feeding us bad power. They had some real phasing problems, as I remember. So I don't know if that's when one of the motors got burned up at that time because of the imbalancing problem. Then Mid-America finally changed the transformer. I don't know enough of that history, other than when I went back and found that we did change in the 50s during the construction, after the design phase, got bumped up to 50s. And then when I was up here in my notes, when I checked them about 3 or 4 months after they ran, they were running 900 gallons a minute. That's where they should have been. That's where they should be, and they're not.
Have you had to bypass this year yet?
That's what we don't want to do.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Awful lot of water.
Yeah.
Because the problem,
As soon as we get 2 inches of rain.
because the problem's coming is that we got to get the capacity up so we can pump it out of here. I mean, the other choice is we can't. We're not going to let us bypass. So if we can't pump it out, we're going to have to let it back up to basis. I don't,
Yeah.
Or we got to work more on people's residents to get them to get some of the groundwater out, so we don't have that problem, which we'll never get it all, obviously. But hopefully, with some of these we've taken out, we've helped, but it's not the total answer. But
We'll keep after him.
So has Loaf got his taken care of then?
I don't think he's the one that's going to.
Yeah, I haven't heard. We agreed he got it done.
He's working on it. I know he's got somebody coming to do it. He asked
does
me
he?
what I had to do, and
Okay.
I said it's just, all I gotta do is basically cap that
Yeah, just caps that line.
overflow there. And I said any Joe Schmo plumber can do it. I said it doesn't even have to be a licensed plumber. I said they'll know what you want to do. So he's supposed to take care of it.
Yeah, so that if we get these 5 or 6 things that we addressed, that we've been talking about, if we can get those stops from getting into the sewer, that gives us some information to feed the DNR that we have helped our I&I problem. And then if we can figure out why these frickin' pumps don't pump enough to get, so we can pump more stuff to lagoons, so we don't bypass it, then we can get up underneath this order.
How much time you got?
We got till September.
Good luck.
Okay. Well, I'm coming back up to meet with Rusty tomorrow to climb in the manholes and put some pressure gauges on, do some more checking. And if we can narrow it down to a spot, that may be what we do, dig a hole and tap it again. Let's see. Or if we can find somebody that can run a locator on top of the ground for us, maybe we can find a bubble in there where there is an air bubble sitting in there we just got to get to. So we got some work to do to try to.
That contraption that Roscoe uses to guide his Vermeer, that's got a depth on it, don't it?
Yeah, but you gotta have a trend in the head of that
Oh, I see.
transmitter.
Yeah, the transmitter in the ground.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if somebody builds one like that, they'll pick up that pipe.
I would think so, guys.
Should have.
I work with some of those locators all the time, but I don't really pay attention to how they locate stuff once in a while. But
Well, I think Duffy's got something, or Sack's got something, because he usually can go along there, because I know when I was working at the plumbing shop there, he could tell you like 27 inches of gas line was, or 30 inches, or...
Yeah. He's got one.
it's a metallic pipe, so you should be able to get it signal. No. Okay. I'm sorry, you know who he's
You're just
There
like
he
the
goes.
city of Sac
City of Sac City.
City.
Oh, okay.
He may need a tone on that line when he's done stuff up to my place.
Yeah.
Well, we can get
It's
in the mail.
super accurate if you can put a tone in the line, if you can hook to one end of the pipe. and-
Because we can do that in the manhole there, we can get on a pipe there in the mail.
Yeah, then he can get pretty darn close.
Yeah, he'll get right down there.
You know the guy that's done a little bit. Okay.
He's just one suggestion. I'm sure there's other people
Yeah.
that seen him work, and he can get pretty close.
He does a good
He said
job.
it's 66 inches, it's 66
Is it?
inches.
Okay.
He's darn good. He's been doing it
Maybe
all
he's
day.
worth a shot to try it, just, okay. Well, that's where we're at, so,
Hope for the best.
yeah, it's been frustrating, I mean, frustrating on this thing, it just doesn't make sense, I mean, I think we got two problems, it's a problem we're trying to solve.
Okay.
Now, anything you do to the pipe isn't gonna change if you can't pump it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No?
Thanks for your information.
Yep. There you go.
It's not good news, I don't like it though.
Drive carefully.